Edmund Bergler, an Austrian Jew, read Freud's interpretation of dreams while still a young man and decided to become a psychoanalyst. He was the assistant director at the Vienna Psychoanalytic Clinic in Austria in the 1930s. In 1938, he immigrated to the United States, where he worked as a psychoanalyst in New York City until his death in 1962. Dr. Bergler produced 24 books and some 300 papers. During the 1940s and 50s, his articles and papers appeared regularly in professional journals and popular magazines. But in spite of his impressive body of work, most graduates from psychotherapeutic training schools have never heard of him. Much, if not most, of the books written about contemporary psychoanalysis or psychotherapy don't mention him. There's very little information about him on the internet. It seems as if he's just vanished, disappeared, but he has something extremely important to tell us about ourselves, about who we are, how we're made up. And that's why we posted a website about him and why we're doing this video. So let's take a look at Bergler's work. Bergler extended the genetic and clinical picture as developed by Freud. We begin life as what Freud termed an instinctual, or id, entity consisting of three primary drives: megalomania, libido, and aggression, which vary in intensity and degree in each of us. An infant is by default megalomaniacal, as he cannot yet differentiate a world apart from himself. Through libido, the pleasure drive, he seeks satisfaction. If that satisfaction is not forthcoming, around food, for example, he reacts aggressively, reaching out, crying, biting, arms and legs flailing about, and so on. But if the aggression is not satisfied instantly, the drive rebounds, turns inward against the child. But this too causes the infant displeasure. Bergler claims that at this point there is a very unique occurrence. The self-aggression is libidinized, thereby seemingly resolving the infant's difficulties by turning displeasure into pleasure. Bergler called this libidinization of self-aggression psychic masochism, which, he said, occurs in the earliest oral stage of development. Bear in mind, this solution occurs through repetition and conditioning over the first few years of life. Bergler says that nobody can go through the protracted helplessness of childhood without acquiring some traces of this psychic poison. Psychic masochism is a universal human trait. But the infant's troubles are far from over. As he or she grows, a sense of self, an ego, and a superego develop. The child internalizes parental and societal rules and prohibitions, and this internalization reinforces the already internalized psychic masochism established in earlier years. The shaded area in the illustration represents the emergence of consciousness and sense of self, or ego. Our consciousness extends outwards into the outside world. All of the material interior to that area represents an unconscious dynamic functioning in each and every one of us. It is the core of who we are. To ignore or dismiss it does not give us a full or realistic picture of ourselves. The problem is this core operates and stays with us lifelong. According to Bergler, the end result of the infantile conflict is codified, stenciled, and set. It is established at the latest by the end of the 5th year of life. Hard as it may be to accept the fact, the psychic elasticity of the human being is exhausted by that age. Our intellectual knowledge increases, we get smarter, the sum total of our recollections is augmented, but emotionally, our fate was decided prior to these achievements, unless, as Bergler says, an effective analysis intervenes. Bergler claims that the ability to see psychic masochism in the patient presupposes that one's own masochism has been thoroughly aired in one's own analysis and, at least partially, made ineffective. Since in most cases psychic masochism is not given the distinction of being analyzed, the analyst who did not hear of it in his own analysis does not transmit knowledge of it to his patients either. Most unfortunate, given Bergler's belief that psychic masochism is the basic neurosis. He states that, without analyzing the basic masochistic substructure, the neurotic cannot be changed. But how is the neurotic to be changed if one of the primary causes of neurosis, unconscious psychic masochism, is not given due consideration? In his Principles of Self-Damage, one of his finest books, Bergler goes to some lengths to address treatment issues. In Chapter 10, he answers objections to or misunderstandings about psychic masochism, and in Chapter 11 he points out typical technical errors in clinical analysis. In book after book, citing analysis of patient after patient, Bergler confirms the negative dynamic of psychic masochism at work. Further, Bergler reasoned that the addition of the psychic masochistic elaboration to the genetic picture necessitated changes to the clinical picture. Again, changes well documented in his many books and papers. Bergler himself notes, the older accepted formulation assumed that an unconscious wish, layer 1, meeting with the superego veto, layer 2, is then cloaked in a defense mechanism, layer 3, and appears in consciousness in its new guise and covered by a rationalization. I believe that an unconscious wish can under no circumstances find so direct a path to the surface and emerge so thinly veiled. Let us illustrate Bergler's 5-layer structure using the metaphor of a courtroom drama. The charge: the commission of intrapsychic crimes. The accused: you. The prosecutor, representing the unconscious ego, under control of the superego. We will show that the defendant is guilty of the greater crime of passivity, and that you have an erroneous perception of your mother as being a refusing mother. Layer 1, the deepest unconscious layer, established in the oral pre-Oedipal phase, is the greater crime. The judge, representing the superego, states, passivity is not acceptable, nor is it acceptable to perceive one's mother as a refusing mother. The defendant replies saying that, okay, then I'll take control of my life. I'll be active, and I will do the refusing. I'll refuse mother and, by extension, the world. The judge vetoes this as well. No, it's not acceptable to refuse one's mother or the world. The weak defense attorney, representing the conscious ego, and without even consulting with the defendant, states, my client will plead guilty to the lesser crime. The judge, very well. To the defendant, he says, your punishment will be a life sentence of conscious suffering, along with the unconscious enjoyment of the suffering. Note that in our drama, Layer 1, the greater crime, is left untouched, but Layer 1 is the core problem. According to Bergler, all human beings go through the first 4 layers. Only in layer 5 do the conscious symptoms of one's drama emerge. The dividing line between a relatively healthy person and a neurotic is the severity of the individual's symptoms. It may be argued that the proof of his claim that psychic masochism is a universal human trait is to be found in his layer 5 mechanism of orality. Herein, Bergler states that every neurotic exhibits the same three-step behavior pattern. 1. Through their behavior or the misuse of an external situation, neurotics unconsciously provoke disappointment, refusal, humiliation. They identify the outer world with the refusing pre-Oedipal mother. 2. Repressing their initial provocation, they become pseudo-aggressive, acting in righteous indignation and seemingly in self-defense. 3. Having received the rebuff or retaliation unconsciously sought, they then consciously indulge in self-pity, unconsciously enjoy psychic masochism. Consciously, it's poor me. Unconsciously, it's and I enjoy it. If Bergler's 5-layer structure is accurate, then a serious re-evaluation of the layer structure of the unconscious is called for, along with the modification of treatment techniques. Recall Bergler's words. Without analyzing the basic masochistic substructure, the neurotic cannot be changed. But in much, if not most, of psychotherapy today, neither the existence of an unconscious, much less its basic masochistic substructure, is even acknowledged. Through his extension of the genetic and clinical pictures as developed by Freud, Bergler has given us a workable and feasible architecture of the unconscious. If this video has been of interest to you, if you have questions, if you are seeking a therapist in the Toronto area, visit our website or contact the number below. And thank you for watching this video about Edmund Bergler's work.